Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to cut and sew this boubou dress with a front slit and pockets. So if you're interested in that, make sure to watch until the end. Also, this channel focuses on fashion and sewing content. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe. So for this outfit, I'm going to be using 2 yards of fabric and we're going to be cutting the front and the back separately. So we're going to start with the front part. To get how much fabric you should put on fold, we're going to get half of our shoulder measurements plus the sleeve length plus 2.5 inches of sewing allowance plus 1 inch of extra allowance, which gives us 20 inches. I'll be showing you how to go about it. So we shall start by drawing a starting line. Then we shall measure our shoulder to bust, which is 11. Then the shoulder to waist is 19 inches. Then the shoulder to hips is 28.5, and we shall just go ahead and mark it. And then our full length is 41, plus a sewing allowance of 1.5, which takes us to 41.5. So we shall just go ahead and mark those points, and then we shall draw a straight line on each of them. So we shall draw the full length line and then the sewing allowance line. I also went ahead to draw in the hips line, the waist line, and then the bust line. So we're going to start by marking out 1 inch at the center there. So we shall mark it all throughout and then we shall draw a straight line. So all our horizontal measurements are going to start from that new line that we've drawn in. So from that new starting point, we're going to measure our neckline, which is 3 inches by 6. So then we shall just join that with a straight line. So starting from that vertical line again, we're going to measure half of our shoulder measurements, which is 8 inches in this case. Then from that new point, we shall then measure our sleeve length, which is 8.5 inches. And then we shall add a sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. So we're going to go down by 1 inch for our shoulder slope. And then we shall draw a straight line to the neckline, just like you see there, from that point to the neckline. So from that shoulder slope, we're going to measure our armhole line, which is 8.3. And then we shall just go ahead and draw in the line. So then we're going to transfer those very measurements from the top there to the bottom part. And then we shall just mark it out. And then we shall just go ahead to join there with a straight line. So moving to the bust line, from the starting point, we're going to measure a quarter of the bust measurement plus 1 inch of ease and then half an inch of sewing allowance. If you want a tighter fit, you can reduce the ease from 1 inch to 0.5. And also you can increase your sewing allowance if you want to have extra room for adjustments in the future. So moving on to the waistline, measure a quarter of the waist measurements plus 1 inch of ease plus half an inch of sewing allowance. So moving on to the hip line, from that new starting point, we're going to measure the hips, divide by 4, plus 1 inch of ease, and then 0.5 inches of sewing allowance. And then we're going to take that same measurement and take it to the full length line. We shall also mark it on the sewing allowance line just like that. Just a reminder, all measurements started from that line. So we're going to go ahead and just draw a line there and then draw a curve on the hip. Then at the sleeve, we shall just join it with a slight curve, just like that. And then all the points will be joined. So moving on to the pocket position, we shall measure 17 to 18 inches from the shoulder line and mark it. So before we cut this out, we're going to fold in that front sewing allowance, just like that. And then we shall just go ahead and pin it down all the way to the bottom. I'm going to be showing you why we're folding it in before we cut. So actually, before we do all that, we're going to be adding 0.5 inches of sewing allowance at the shoulder slope, and that's where we shall be cutting it from. So now that all that is done, we're now going to do the cutting. So we're going to use the front piece to cut out the back, but we are first going to leave it folded in just like that. and that is the reason why I wanted it folded in while we are cutting it in, so that when it's folded back it just aligns with the neckline. But yes, moving on to the back, we shall first start by putting it on fold, and then we shall leave a zip allowance of 1.5 inches, and then we shall be starting all our measurements from that zip allowance line. So while that front piece is still folded in just like that, we're going to just place that center on that zip allowance line. You can even go ahead and pin it down, just make sure it's in place. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw back the shoulder line, just like that. So we shall draw in the sewing allowance line and the original shoulder line. So from the original shoulder line, we're going to go down by 1.5 inches, and that's going to be the neckline for the back piece. And then we shall just trace out the same horizontal neck measurement, just like that, which was 3 inches. And so we're just going to join that with a curve. Just go ahead and draw that line also on the zip allowance. So we're just going to trace out the rest of the front piece, just like that. And that's it for the back piece. So for the front part, before we open up that folded part, we're going to notch it at the bottom, just so that we can get that position on the other half that is folded. So we shall just go ahead and remove all the pins, and that's what it looks like. So it was folded in to create that V, so that when we are sewing it inwards like that, it's going to just align with the neckline. So we're just going to go ahead and separate the center front. So from the bottom, we're going to measure about 5 to 6 inches upwards for the front slit. You can make it higher or lower depending on your preference. And so after that, we shall just stitch from the top there up to that point. Then we shall leave that bottom bit. So moving on to the back piece, we shall also separate it because we're going to be using a blind zip at the back. So don't forget to mark your wrong sides. So for the back, we're going to measure the distance where our zip is going to be, and then we shall mark it. And then from that point, we shall stitch downwards to the bottom. So after we are done sewing that part, we shall just go and press the sides like that and just fold in that allowance on both sides. I'll be showing you how to go about it later. So next, we're going to cut the pockets, and we're going to put 4 pieces together, just like that. Make sure each of the 2 pieces have the right sides facing each other. So we shall just place all the 4 pieces on top of each other like that, and then we're going to mark our starting point, just like that, and then we're going to measure 8.5 inches, just like that, and then we're going to place our hand there, and then going downwards, we're just going to curve and freestyle like that, and make sure there's so much ease because we're not going to add any sewing allowance. So then we shall just go ahead and cut them out. That's what it's going to look like. Make sure you mark all your wrong sides. And so after we separate them, that's how they're going to be. We shall be pairing 2 for each side. So I've gone ahead to overlock the pieces all around. So for the front piece, I've stitched up to that point, and I've left the open part for the slit. Also, I went on to overlock those raw edges at the center, and that's what it looks like when we open it up. So using a flat iron, we shall just press down that part to make sure it's neat. And also, since I've overlocked my edges, I'm just going to leave it like that. But if you don't have access to an overlock machine, you might as well just fold in those parts and stitch them down, just as you see in the video. And that will give you a clean finish. So when you flip it over, that's what the right side of the front piece looks like. So moving on to the next thing, we're going to be applying bias tape at the neckline. So I've already posted a video showing you exactly how to do this, so you can go check it out. So that's what the front neckline looks like after me binding it. So moving on to the back piece, I stitched down from that point to the bottom of the hem. Then from this point to the upper part of the neckline, I used a temporary stitch because I'm going to be taking it out. So for the lower part, I used a normal permanent stitch, and the reason why I've used that temporary stitch is because I want to make it easier when I'm going to iron out the allowance for the zipper. So when I open it up like that, it's easy for me to just press it down. And so after I'm done with that, I'll just remove the temporary stitches and install my zipper. So as you can see, I've overlocked the shoulder and the side seams, and also at the zip allowance. So I'm just going ahead to press it with a flat iron, and then I'm going to take out those temporary stitches up to that point where the zipper is supposed to stop. After we are done doing that, we shall just go ahead and apply the binding around the neckline on both the pieces, and I have a video that shows how to do that, so you can go check it out. As you can see, this is what it looks like after we are done. That's the back piece, and then also we have the front piece that's already done. So moving on to the next part, we're just going to measure from that point like that up to the bottom, and this is going to be for the black pieces that we're going to attach there. So the length here is 44, but we shall use 45 inches. So the pieces are going to be 1 inch wide. And so we're just going to go ahead and cut the pieces on bias. So when you look at this fabric, we have the cross grain, which is that part, and it's a bit stretchy. And then we have the straight grain, which is that part, and it's very stiff. So what we are looking for is that diagonal position, which is the bias, and it's usually the most stretchy, or should I say flexible bit. So we're going to cut our strips along that diagonal bit. So what we shall do is just fold it like that, and then we shall cut 2 strips, which are 45 inches long and 2 inches wide. So as you can see, I've already finished cutting them out, so I'm just going to separate them. We shall then use a flat iron and fold in each of the sides by 0.5 inches, just like that, so that we're left with 1 inch. So at this point, I've finished ironing in those pieces, as you can see. So the final width is going to be 1 inch wide, just like that. So we're just going to place the bias binding just like that. Just make sure you line it up with the center exactly like that. So here I've already pinned it down. So what I was telling you about lining it up with the center is that black strip should begin exactly at the center line. And you should do that until you reach the bottom. And then we shall also be doing that for the other side, but we shall first wait. So we shall first start with one side and stitch it all the way there, just at the edge, till we reach the bottom. So then we shall also come to the opposite side at the outer edge and stitch it all the way to the bottom. And when we reach that corner, just make a slight fold like that, and then we shall just stitch over it. So at this point, we're done. This is the fold I was telling you about. So using a flat iron, we're just going to go and press it down. So by the way, for this part, if you come from this direction sewing downwards, when you come on this other side, make sure you use the same direction sewing downwards. If you don't do that, most likely you can end up having folds on your strips. So to avoid that, just use the same direction. So we're going to just go ahead and do the same process for that other side. So we shall just pin it down and then stitch starting from that point, and then also stitch the other side. So after we are done, this is what it's going to look like. Make sure you press it down with a flat iron. So now you can go ahead and overlock the shoulders. And so moving on to the back piece, we're going to insert the zipper. So we're going to open the zipper and position it like that. And then we shall pick one side and place it at the zipper allowance of that part. And then we shall repeat the same process for the other side as well. So we shall put them in place and then pin them down. I have a video that shows the whole process of installing the blind zipper, so you can go check it out. So by the time we are done, the zipper will be closing like that. So here I've already finished installing the blind zip. Like you can see, it's very neat. So if you want to learn how to do that, just make sure to look for the video on my page. So now we're going to fix the pocket. To find the pocket position, you have to measure from the shoulder downwards to either 17 or 18 inches. So then I placed the pockets just like that, right sides facing each other. And so we shall be sewing along that point. Then we shall do the same for the other side. We shall measure the shoulder to pocket position, and then we shall place it there and pin it down. We shall repeat the same process for the front piece. Just like that, right sides facing each other. So I'm going to just go and sew them down. So at this point, I've already sewn the pockets down, just like that, and then I've just pressed it out like that with a flat iron, and I've done the same for all the pieces. So next, we're going to be placing the back side on top of the front, right sides facing each other, and then we're going to join the shoulders using 0.5 inches. As you can see, we're already done with that part. So the next thing is we're going to move on to the sleeves. We shall just open up the sleeves like that, and then we're going to just fold them in by the amount of sewing allowance that you left, and then we shall stitch them down. So as you've seen in the video, I've already finished stitching down the hem of the sleeves. I also went ahead to press the seams just to make it neat. And so the next thing we're going to do is right sides facing each other. We're going to go ahead and stitch all around like that up to the hemline. And we're going to do that on both sides. So like you've seen, I've already finished doing that on both sides. Just like that. And now we're going to open up the seams, and then we shall use a flat iron and press them open. And then after that, we shall just fold in the hem and then sew it down. So at this point, I've already finished doing that. If you've noticed, I reduced the slit, and that's because my client didn't want a very high slit. Just make sure to open up the seams and press them down using a flat iron to make sure it's all neat. And so yes, this is the final outfit. If the video was helpful, make sure to leave a like and a comment. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. And if you like such content, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on anything. And yes, see you in the next video.